I'm going to call this meeting to order. For all those that care to, please stand for an opening prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. Let us pray. Lord, as we close this year, we come together with grateful hearts for the progress and accomplishments we've made as a community. We thank you for the strength, resilience, and unity that have carried us through challenges and triumphs alike. As we look toward the future, we ask for your continued guidance, your wisdom, blessing for all who serve and who all call this community home. May we work together in peace, compassion, and service to build an even brighter future ahead. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, good evening, everyone. At this time, we're going ahead and moving on to citizens participation. I'm going to open citizens participation. Anyone that's wanting to speak on anything that is not on the agenda, please come forward, and we've got 3 minutes for you. Seeing that there is none, I'm going to close citizens participation. Moving on to the consent agenda. I welcome the council to ask any questions or comments about items number 1 through 3 on the agenda. Seeing that there is none, I now need a motion and a second for approval of the consent agenda.
Motion. Second.
Got a motion and a second. All of those in favor?
Aye.
All of those opposed? Are there any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0-0. Moving on to board, commission, and committee schedule. The Board of Adjustment meeting will be on January the 2nd, 2025. Our next City Council meeting will be January the 7th, 2025. Our next Planning and Zoning meeting will be January the 13th, 2025. And the City Council meeting after that will be January the 21st, 2025. Moving on to old business and tabled items. Item number 4. This item was postponed at our last regular meeting that was on November the 19th at the request of the developer. And staff has informed me that we do have updates to share with council on this item. In order to take up this item for discussion and a possible vote, I need a motion and a second to renew Bill 24-63 for its second reading and final vote.
Motion. Second.
I've got a motion and a second to renew Bill 24-63 for a second reading and final vote. Laura will now read the ordinance by title.
An ordinance of the City Council approving a petition for the creation of a community improvement district, establishing the Farm Road 93 Community Improvement District as a political subdivision of the state of Missouri, and directing the city clerk to notify the Missouri Department of Economic Development of the creation of the district.
Thank you, Laura. We've got Karen Haynes here this evening.
Good evening, Karen Haynes, Community Development Director. The CID petition presented to Council originally on October 15th and subsequently tabled has been formally amended and language updated to reflect a change in ownership of several parcels within the CID development area. P13:11 LLC purchased 3 parcels from O.R. Shamrock Richards LLC, and they will be working together on the CID development moving forward.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Haynes. Does council have any questions or discussion before moving? Mr. Gerke.
So nothing else has changed except for notification of ownership change?
Correct. They went through the legal notification, which required public legal in the newspaper, a new one, and then also letters to the affected property owners. But there is no substantive change beyond the ownership change.
Thank you.
Do we have any additional questions from council? Seeing that there is none, we will now move on to final passage. I now need a motion and a second for the final passage of Bill 24-63, please.
Motion. Second.
Got a motion and a second. We're now going to take a vote on our computer. Motion carries 7-0. 7-1-0. Moving on to item number 5. I need a motion and a second for the second reading of Bill 24-72 by title only, please.
Motion. Second.
Got a motion and a second. All of those in favor?
Aye.
All of those opposed? Are there any abstentions? Motion carries 800. Laura will read the ordinance by title.
An ordinance of the City Council amending Title I, Government Code, Chapter 120, City Officers and Employees, Article 121, General Provisions, Section 120.025, Mayor and Council Compensation of the Municipal Code of the City of Republic, Missouri.
Thank you, Laura. Do we have any discussion from council regarding item number 5?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Neal.
so I'd like to make a motion to amend Bill 24-72. My motion is to amend the proposed ordinance as follows, and I think we all have a copy that has blue writing on it if you want to follow along to make it easier to follow me. It would amend as follows: paragraph A, after the word "sum of" on the first line, we would strike the words $500 and insert in their place the words $800 for each month of service during the term of office, plus $100. And then in paragraph B, after the words "sum of" on the second line, we'd be striking the words $250 and inserting in their place the words $400 for each month of service during term of office, plus $50.
Thank you, Councilmember Neal. Do we have any questions from council?
Mr. Mayor, just clarification. So what we're doing is we're changing it. I get it from $250 on council members to $400 plus $50 for each additional, and that's a special called work session that I would call. Is that the objective in that?
The objective would be for the official meetings or like the called work sessions.
Work sessions, okay.
Essentially, we're keeping it the same as what yours was.
Yes.
We're just we're tying a little bit of it to actually showing up for the meetings, but like what we discussed last time and what the mayor brought up, sometimes things come up, people can't be there. But there's a lot of additional things we go to that aren't just the meetings that I think there should be compensation. But on an average month, it would be the same amount, it's just split a little differently.
Understand. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron. Thank you, Mr. Neal. Any other discussion from council? So we have a motion made by Councilmember Neal. Is there a second to this motion?
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Do we have any additional questions, comments from council
On the amendment.
on the amendment to the ordinance? Okay, not seeing any questions. Okay, I will now call to vote on the motion to amend Bill number 24-72. All of those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Any abstentions? Motion carries 7-1-0. So we have now successfully amended this ordinance. We will now move to debate and discussion over Bill number 24-72 as amended. Does council have any additional questions or discussion? Mr. Neal.
Just kind of follow up on what we talked about last time. I think, it's been quite some time since the compensation had been looked at. This takes a lot of time for people, especially as we're doing things during the day. The MM Highway meeting the other day, for instance, if you're taking time out of your workday to go to those, not everybody has a job or is a position they can afford to just do that. And so we would hate for that to be a barrier for anyone to be able to take this role and have a seat on council. We don't want to keep people from that because they can't afford it, essentially. That's not a good reason. So hopefully by amending it in this way, it makes it a little more enticing or could help somebody potentially miss work if there's a little more compensation with it. And then again, tying it to the meetings, there's just a little bit there with the amendments where showing up has some value, but like you brought up, Mr. Mayor, if something happens, life happens, you can't be at all of them, but you're still spending time, you're still going to the extra stuff, so we don't want to be completely missing out on those just because, life happened, basically.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. Mr. Gerke.
Sorry, I was late for last time. But compared to areas around us, comparable, different. I mean, I know I had just a little bit of discussion last time.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Cameron.
So I would say that is probably a little bit of an anomaly comparatively around the area because most of them do not compensate. However, historically, from what I have seen in my capacity and the operation that I have, what we require of council, usually the mayor makes probably around 15,000 versus what we're doing here. So this is somewhat lower than what I've seen historically in the work that I've done working with political bodies, where mayor gets 15,000, a fixed amount, and council gets 10,000. So why that's traditionally around this area not the case, it is not uncommon throughout the framework of a mayor council operation or compensation. So, and I do think just my own position on it is we as a body, as a staff, are calling this board or this council together more often than we ever have. But I also believe when you've got somewhere around $250 million worth of infrastructure we're working on, plus the growth of the community, we're not just leading a small stagnant community, we are moving very forward. So that's the basis behind this request, and I appreciate your consideration.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Thank you, Mr. Gerke. Any additional questions or discussion from council?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Campbell.
So back in April, I kind of spoke against this, and even 3 weeks ago, or whenever our last meeting was. And it's kind of weird how sometimes you'll read something and one day and it doesn't mean anything to you, and then you read it again another day and it kind of opens your eyes to it. So we are living in a time where there are close to 1,500 church pastors leaving leadership, and sometimes we expect them not to be paid for their time. And then, so Wednesday after our last council meeting, I'd read this verse, you must not muzzle an ox to keep it from eating as it treads out the grain. So moving forward and asking other people to step up to do this role, I don't want to be the one to say, we don't want to pay you, even though I have in the past been somewhat against it. So for the record, I just wanted to say that, you know, it's not that I'm being wishy-washy on this, but I've just read something differently and it hit me differently, and that's kind of where I'm at tonight. So
Sure.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Any additional questions, comments from council? So I really appreciate what everyone had to say tonight. Appreciate the work that you put into this. Definitely a topic worth discussing, and really appreciate everyone that had something to add to that discussion. So at this point, we will move to final passage. I need a motion and a second for final passage of Bill 24-72 as amended, please.
Motion.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. We're now going to take a roll call vote on our computer.
Is it not working?
Oh, it's working. I'm thinking.
Okay.
Motion carries 6 to 1 to 1. Moving on to new business and first reading of ordinances. Item number 6. I need a motion and a second for the first reading of Bill 24-73 by title only, please.
Motion.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All of those in favor?
Aye.
All of those opposed? Are there any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0-0. Laura will read the ordinance by title, please.
An ordinance of the City Council amending Title 8 Fees, Chapter 805 Fee Schedule, Section 805.100, Utility Administration of the Municipal Code of the City of Republic, Missouri.
Thank you, Laura. We've got Mr. Cameron to give us an overview.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I have prepared or provided the presentation that I provided several weeks ago at the work session. I have taken out several slides. What I would tell the community is there is a video that is available to understand the background of the rate structure that we are presenting. We have an agenda item tonight to discuss the first project that has to take place, which is the water tower and the engineering of that project. But I kind of just want to go through a few more additional items that we've added to this tonight, just to give an idea when someone asked about the idea of spending cash versus building our infrastructure with debt. So I've actually there's some things in front of you tonight, but I've also provided them for the community as well. But I want to walk through this real quickly, just simply because of, for the community and those that are watching for just tonight, what the rate structure is about. So just a little bit of background. We have waited for the better part of 8 years to address water rates, and the reason why is because we were addressing the wastewater need and the compliance issue at the wastewater plant to meet DNR guidelines to come into compliance with an administrative order. What's interesting about that administrative order is I learned today that the city actually had civil penalties that they actually paid on the wastewater treatment plant that I somehow may have just skimmed over last time, but I'm very proud that we have moved that project forward. Unfortunately, now it is time to work on the other side of the project, which is the water side. And this is the first project that we're going to be working on, is the water tower on the Convoy of Hope side. The estimated project cost between this, engineering fees, and the tower is $15 million. As you know, we borrowed $100 million for the wastewater treatment plant. We received $50 million in ARPA funds from the state. Actually, $25 million in ARPA, another $25 in general revenue. So special thanks to the legislature for working with us on that. On this particular project, we received $5 million as we partnered with Convoy of Hope to put this the water tower on their property. It is they donated, it's 1.5 acres, and you can see it's at the James River I-44 intersection. We, as a cooperative effort, we did receive the Consolidated Appropriations Act, or the Omnibus Bill. We received $5 million from EPA for that project. So somewhere around $55 million we received in total funds for both water and wastewater. We've only got about 5. I'm not going to say only 5 because it's a $15 million project, so over 33% of the project will be funded by the grant funds. And it does require us to have what we call a NEPA plan. We have to have a project site plan, an assessment, a work plan, which Trent, I don't see him, but Trent was the one that was working on this project for us that actually got us to this point and moving this project forward. But naturally with that project, it comes a rate structure that is not desirable for anyone, but at the same time, it is to address the deficit that has been in the city for quite some time. And this is just kind of the timeline back up for when the water tower, just talking about the first phase of the project. We'll do the NEPA and pre-award by March of 2025, but we'll begin to build cash for the construction. In tonight's ordinance is the rate increase, and I want to explain the rate increase. What I'm recommending is that it does not go into effect until March 1 at any rate. So basically water and sewer was supposed to go up January 1. We prefer to defer those to go to March 1 so that we can send out notification and written communication to the community so they have time to adjust to it versus getting a sewer rate increase on March or January 1 and then a water rate increase on March 1. So we want to do those both. So we're going to defer any increases until the March 1 date. So, and again, what we would do after the second read in January, there would be a written notification that would go to the community regarding the need for the project. This is when we anticipate Jason Garner with Burns McDonald's here. So if you see that it says initiate operations of tower and well in August of 2027, it means get busy. But really we need to get this tower online. And I'll say this for anybody that says we're not in a place where I would say it's an emergency, but we need the water tower online by 2027. It doesn't mean the city's going to run out of water, but it does come into play where you might have watering restrictions at a certain period of time. It also includes in there the 5-year master plan. So we have to do over $33 million of water improvements over a 5-year period. That includes the first tower, the second tower, which immediately once we purchase or begin to proceed with this first tower, we'll go to buying another site, buying another parcel to build the second tower. So we'll do an analysis, and the plan will be within 3 years to start construction of a second tower and well in the city. And then there's a 20-year planning period, and then the small main replacements. So I mentioned this to the community before. The city has a number of 4-inch mains that are feeding into 8 and 12-inch mains. Basically, there's a fire flow issue. Those are estimated to be around $14 million. One of the areas that has not been covered is the water meter replacement program, which is about a $3.5 million project, because the city does have at times where it's seeing a loss of 30%. So let me put that in perspective. You put 1 million gallons in the air, you've immediately reduced it down to a 700,000 gallon tank because you're going to lose 30% of the water to leaks or old meters. So the replacement program, which is an automated system, is called AMI, would be a remote read system that we would deploy once the cache is built. The issue here and why we're doing the rate structure the way we are is to build cash to pay for it versus issuing debt. I have a sheet in front of you, and I'll pull this up later. I'll kind of come back to this, borrowing $100 million versus doing this strictly through the rate structure over this 3-year period and over an extended period. So I showed this same information, just want to show it again. There's about 1,300 residents that actually just use the flat rate, which basically would be your seniors. There's about roughly 5,800 residential users, and there are about 600 active commercial utility accounts. And that's how the rate structure was established around, and just kind of creating what the numbers would look like in the rate structure. So I just wanted to give you a perspective of how our rate class breaks down. I based the rate structure off of 7,700 residents. Bob has pulled together this spreadsheet, which I again will show on the screen, of kind of how that begins to grow and expand as the community continues to grow, and how that was recorded in the rate structure. So this is the projected per ordinance. This was what the original projections were, and why I throw this slide in there is basically this is what was the original plan, not even the original plan, but what we set into place before we knew what was going to happen with the wastewater plant and what would happen at the legislature. And this is what is the rate structure that is in front of you tonight, of what the actual would be to generate $100 million over the 17-year period. Last meeting, and I don't want to muddy the water, and Bob, I promised you, I told you I wouldn't, but I'm going to do it anyway because I think it's worth noting. I want to show you what the rate structure should be. I'm going to back up this because I don't want to go past it. The last time I mentioned this, I talked about depreciation of what would fund the department, or fund the water and wastewater. And basically, I didn't get the bottom one. But basically, if you're going to fund depreciation, water meters last 10 years. Right now, the city, basically, when we did the water painting job, so right now we need, say, $10 million to build the water tower. There should be an account there's already $10 million setting in. That's what funded depreciation means. So you actually build cash once you put it online. So to fund the depreciation on a $50 million schedule, not $100 million, but just say the 40-year schedule would be an additional $13.52 a month plus the meter schedule. So actual what the water rate should be in 2027 on the flat rate, you're looking at it at the top. The sewer rate, you're looking at the bottom. That's what it should be to technically fund the depreciation per DNR regulations that they've given us. I just want to show that that's not what we're recommending, but somewhere in 2027, this is going to have to be a discussion for the future. Otherwise, it pretty much just pushes the same problem down the path for future city councils to address. But this is the rate structure that we're presenting tonight. Naturally, I would prefer to show this one because that's the actual number, long-term, best interest of the city from building a financial position with cash. But this is the number that we're recommending tonight, or recommending for the first read and then the second read in January. The other thing that I'm also going to recommend that be included in the future rate structures is that it be tied to the consumer price index as well, because all this addresses the debt structure. This does not take care of the operating expense and the day-to-day, just inflationary issues that go on in the department. As you've heard me say before, and I don't want to be the person that has to present the information, but that is the absolute fact of what it needs to be from running an enterprise fund, is building the cash to do it without issuing as much debt as we've had to do on the wastewater plant. And I've said this, and I'll say it again publicly, I do believe the day is coming you're going to see a $200 to $250 utility bill in both water and wastewater. It's just regulations and what it's costing to actually produce the water, but also at the same time to treat it, to meet federal regs, is getting more and more costly. So basically the base rate charge from the 2024 to the 2025 rate that was proposed is an additional $7.50 incremental each year on the base rate, and then $3 per year on the surcharge. Do you have my other slide, those other two? So I want to show this to just kind of show what would happen if we borrowed the money. That's not the overlay, not that one. And it ain't that one. Council, there we go. Go back one. There we go. So what this is basically what it would look like if we borrowed. So Bob pulled together an amort schedule or amortization schedule for us today of just what it would be if we borrowed at 3.75% over a 30-year period. The annual debt service would be $5.6 million. The interest paid over the life of the debt would be an additional $68 million to the $100 million. What I appreciate what Bob did basically is showing what that debt service would be to a ratepayer if there was zero offset by investment of the surplus cash. So as you know, with the money that we have now from the general revenue, or actually our own money that we borrowed, Bob has been able to invest that, get about, 100 basis points, sometimes at some point 200 basis points more for our investment. So he's actually, what he's done is taken a hypothetical scenario, run a kind of a quasi model to the best that he could of what we think it would be, But anybody that remembers, 3 or 4 years ago, it was not 275 basis points. It was supremely less than that. So he gave it 275 basis points in this particular matter. You would return about $26 million. Bob, I'm sorry, I forgot what my math was today on that. It was about, $42 million? So basically, the net increase or the net difference would be an additional $528 per year, an additional $44 a month. If you do the math of that $44 a month versus what the rate structure we built, it's pretty much a wash. Except you're not, from what the rate structure we pulled together of about 20, I think it was $45 over a 3-year period. So they pretty much come out to look the same, which was actually good for us to see. But that's the whole idea. If you borrow the money, the one downside of borrowing the money versus building cash is if in the event that you don't need the full 100 million, if you borrow it, you're on the hook for paying for it. In this situation, you could always roll back your rate 5 years from now, 10 years from now, depending on what the needs and the growth and development of the community. Because some of those improvements of the $100 million that's needed in the water capital investment will be borne and dealt with by the developers as they expand their own infrastructure. So sometimes I see the Cronkites here, their project is here. There's times they extend water extensions that we don't have to because it's part of their own development. So the next developer extends based upon that 8-inch water main. So sometimes water extends just through natural progression of development. So there might be times where you're like, we're not going to have to extend into that part of the town, or we're going to partner to extend in that part of town. So by borrowing money, you're kind of stuck to the loan, and you have to pay it whether you use it or not. In a situation by using cash, you have the option if you want to roll it back, or you've saved some opportunity, save some money, that you can. Oh, one more. Thank you. And the next one is a spreadsheet in front of you, and this is just basically what a document that I asked Bob to pull together. This may be hard to see online. We have this available if anybody wants to see it, but it kind of shows a natural progression. He used a 1% growth rate, which is extremely conservative in the total number of meters, but also using a very modest consumer price index adjustment. You'll see by the year 2040, it builds approximately $99 million that would be used to fund all the to meet the master planning of the water department. He also ran a scenario that if we were to change the minimum rate from 1,500 to 2,000, it may pick up more people in the senior class potentially, that would drop that down by 18 million. So the rate structure would somewhat have to go back up to make up the 18 million that's there. But again, that's a long-range plan to address the 17-year need by using cash. And so with that is the only update that I have, or anything that I've missed, Bob or Lisa or anyone else, Jason from Burns and McDonald. But that is the recommendation. As unfortunate it is the need. And I will say to those that are watching and those that have seen this before, this is not necessarily driven by all the water. This is also driven by the need that we had to defer the wastewater treatment plant improvements. So anybody that has any questions between now and the second read, or any reason for the background or the math or how we arrived at it, I'll be more than happy to answer any questions. I want to just clarify one point. Bob did include it. It was a 2% CPI increase each year. And I'll take any questions you have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron. Do we have any questions from council? Mr. Gerke?
So I know we looked at this before on the sewer side too, but how's it compared to other areas? I know I've seen other cities have had to increase theirs for the same reason, but I'm curious where this would put us at to some of our neighbors.
Well, I'll put it this way. We're leading in a lot of categories, growth and development. We'll be leading in both categories, water and sewer, and it's not close. But I will say this, to that question, because I've had to answer it several times, the anomaly to Republic is the growth and development has taken place, one, but the decision to build a wastewater plant on a hill makes us a very different community because we're paying so much for it. It's hard to compare what it costs us to treat water here versus what other people are doing, so it's not even comparable to that. Water, we're behind because the rates have been deferred for 20 years. If we'd have followed the CPI for 20 years, this is what the rate structure would have been if it had been followed. But I would tell you, we will lead both in water and sewer. I'll just be straightforward with you.
Get the playing catch up. Do you see, you can't predict everything. Are we going to come back in 2 years or a year in and need to kick it up again? Or do you feel like this encompasses the next, 3 years or?
Okay, so I'll be clear. I having a history and background, I wrote this rate structure based upon what I believe will get you to $100 million. I'm talking about what you need for capital. The CPI and what it's costing, the cost of employees and people is going up 3 to 7% a year. So this is only talking about the capital need. What I want to do is address the immediate capital need. I'm telling you, if we do not include the depreciation cost and the cost of meter replacement, that's why I had the other slide. I just wanted on the record that this is a rate to get you to the 100 million. To truly fund an enterprise fund the right way, it needs to be funded depreciation in that department that will replace the existing infrastructure. Because by the time you build this new tower in 3 years, 20 years from now, it will be you'll start having to do maintenance. That's why on the water side, the city had to use ARPA funds to paint its towers. It did not have the cash to do it. To answer your question, I believe this gets you to the 100 million. I do believe it'll have to incrementally continue to increase, but the city's also projected to grow. So I also believe the growth of the community. So I think you need to, my recommendation, if I was running the utility as my own again, I would tell you, I think every 2 years, the body ought to look at what the growth rate of the city is, look at the inflationary costs, and there ought to have to be a mandatory review of the rate structure every 2 years to make sure this does not ever happen in the future. I think it ought to be written into law that the body has to consider a rate increase to adjust it. I don't think it should just be sitting there like not reviewed.
Yeah.
But in fairness to this community, they were under a compliance order and the wastewater had to go first. But I want to answer the question to tell you, I do not believe it truly meets it. I think they'll have to be evaluated again, but it achieves the objective to get the water tower online in 3 years. I know that for a fact.
I understand we're playing catch up, and so then the previous slide that you showed, is that what you think? In a perfect world, that's what the rate should be?
It is. I believe it should be closer to, go back. In a perfect world, I'll show you what I believe it ought to be in 2027. Go back to the slide deck, sorry. If you can give it back to me. Thank you, I got it now. I'm showing you both water and sewer a little bit.
Yeah.
And again, this is light. So a meter in the city lasts 10 years. So basically it will only last 10 years, and the cost of that meter, the cost of the total system is $3.5 million. So if you're not building $3.5 million in the system, then you're borrowing from the future, or you're borrowing from the sewer department to pay for it. So basically putting a meter fee on that's a $4.25 flat fee, because it would take 3 years to put them in by the time we build the cash. Then a depreciation on a $50 million schedule, 40 years is a standard. That's $13.52. So I just added that to the old rate structure, and that comes up to $49.53. The surcharge is right. Then if you add a cost of living, or that would be the accurate rate, and the bottom rate down at the below would be what would cover, according to DNR, their loan documents. They're asking us just to cover their loan documents. They're asking for $900,000 a year. That's with the number of the base rate on the sewer and the surcharge in 2027. That would meet that objective in the compliance of those things. That is, if you were to do that math, that is accurate. I believe it needs to be considered at least. But for this year, this is the first step, because we've waited dealing with the wastewater plant. The other thing about it is, Councilmember Gerke, I want to get through the next legislative session to see what we can do, working on additional funding for the wastewater plant, to see what we can do to offset it. So I don't want to just go to that option, but I have to make it for the record to say that's what an enterprise fund should operate like.
Thank you, Mr. Gerke.
Thanks.
Just for clarification, Mr. Cameron, so the 4953, that includes the 425 and 1352?
That is correct.
Okay. Do we have any additional questions from council?
So you say we could possibly see a more increase on top of this in 3 years?
I'm saying that would, to me, this gets you to what I believe will get you to the $15 million to build your water tower, to get it started. Because you need $5 million a year. You need $100 million over 17 years. That's the master plan that's laid out.
Okay.
So that's just the master plan on your capital side. But you still have a department that runs where you have the existing system that has to be replaced, that has not been funded for so long. So we're talking about replacing 4-inch lines, but building brand new. So I believe that the rate structure, because you've only, what is it, Bob? The revenue for the last 5 years has been a surplus of about $60,000 in an enterprise fund. It needs to have 90 days operating cash just to run. So building its own operating cash, this is just building capital for the capital need, not the operating day to day. The team that goes out and actually installs them and builds them. So yeah, you'll have to build cash to help continue to build that department.
So we'll probably coming back to the city again and with another increase. So that compared to the loan, you're looking at the same thing even compared to if we get the loan.
Yeah, you'd pay an additional $42 million over the life of the loan that you would not be paying if you just pay cash.
And of course you can't see the future, but how do you think that's going to affect the growth of Republic? If we have these numbers in front of us, like, 2040, we're looking at 102.45 for water and sewer. I mean, how do you think that'll affect the city, or do you think that'll affect the growth of the city at all?
I think what you're going to see, because again, background, just understanding what the regulations are going to be. I know I'm going to answer your question. I think that it's going to be other people in other cities you're going to see have to do the exact same thing.
Okay.
We're going to be the ones that stick. We're going to be the one that basically says, hey, listen, we're lower in Republic. Part of that is because we built a plant on a hill. So back to that. So the wastewater plant, I can't control that rate because that was a decision to build it up, and it cost us, just to upgrade the wastewater system pumping system was $30 million. Forget the plant. The plant itself was another 90. So that's a complete outlier in that, so I understand why that rate. But deferring the maintenance to take care of the wastewater system, because Councilmember Harder, you remember this well, and Wilson, they suppressed the water because the sewer was so high. So the water has always taken a hit. So it's kind of been sitting down there because they knew they had to spend so much money. But yes, it's going to cost more, but do I believe it's going to impact the growth and development of Republic? I think other cities are going to basically take this because I've done this for too long. Funded depreciation is not something that's included in most people's things, and eventually people are going to pay for it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harder. Any additional questions, discussion from council?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, one more question. So,
No.
I know we're constantly looking for other funding sources. We get funds for this. This could be adjusted both ways, I assume, up and down rate-wise.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing. I appreciate the question because the answer is yes. Imagine if we didn't get the $5 million omnibus money. So basically, if we didn't get the $50 million from the state legislature, it could be substantially higher than this, and it's non-negotiable. We had to build the plant. So it's like, it could have been, what I probably should do is put the slide up if we didn't receive anything. But to your point, there is a sliding scale that if we receive additional funding, naturally we would come back. That's why I don't want to adjust the 2027 necessarily. I don't want to put that red number in play until we get to go through the 2025 and 2026 legislative session. And yeah, I had meeting with our representative this morning. We're preparing for the 2025 legislative session, and we'll continue to find ways to try to reduce it. But we've been successful for 55 million. I believe we'll continue to keep beating that drum. Because our growth and development, to your question, will it impact us? I think the reason we got 55 million is because of our growth and development, that people see that we are an asset to the region and to the state for what we're doing for both the regional budget, but also the state budget.
Good point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harder. Any additional questions, comments from council? Seeing that there is none, I do not have any citizens' comment cards for this evening. And as a reminder to council, this is a first read, so make sure that you get with staff if you have any questions before the next meeting. Item number 7, I need a motion and a second for the first reading of Bill 24-74 by title only, please.
Motion.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All of those opposed? Are there any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0-0. Laura will read the ordinance by title, please.
An ordinance of the City Council amending Title IV Land Use, Chapter 415 Sign Regulation, Section 415.120, Commercial Sign Overlay District of the Municipal Code of the City of Republic, Missouri.
Thank you, Laura. And we've got Patrick Ruiz here this evening to give us an overview.
Good evening, Patrick Ruiz, Associate Planner. So the City of Republic is requesting amendments to Chapter 415 Sign Regulation, specifically to Section 415.120 Commercial Sign Overlay Districts. So in general, all of the proposed amendments revise the current ordinance as necessary to ensure the intent of the section is upheld for all detached signage. So the main intent of these districts is to provide flexibility of restrictions on detached signage in proximity to intersections that have heavier traffic flows. So that would be like US Highway 60, State Highway 174, James River Freeway, State Highway MM, and I-44. So this would allow for larger and taller signs within those circles, which you can see in the exhibit. So to uphold the section, these amendments propose to allow for off-premises signs, so like billboards, to have the same flexible restrictions as on-premises signs, and update the highway overlay district, which you can see is kind of at 174 and 60, and then 60 and MM, to have less stringent than the general regulations for all detached signs, which is not located at those intersections. So city staff recommends approval of these referenced amendments.
Thank you, Mr. Ruiz. Do we have any questions from council?
I have one. So just on area B, that's up at I-44. How do we? That's not in city limits, is it?
Are you talking about the one, the most northern part?
Yes.
There are some parcels that are in the city, so
Okay.
it's just, reference to those. And those points, it's there's a radius, and so we just included that if, any of those properties were to ever be annexed in the city.
Thank you, Mr. Ruiz.
Thank you, Mr. Harder. Mr. Updike.
Why not include the 360 I-44 interchange?
That is something I guess we could include. Currently, there's no parcels within that area that's in the city limits, but I guess if we started to annex out there, we could look into that.
Would you also include the area like N, T, and I-44 area too for future annexation? I meant for signage, since that is a heavily traveled, Republic thoroughfare.
N and T and I-44?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it could be possible, but it's pretty far away from the city limits currently, so.
Thank you, Mr. Updike. Mr. Neal.
Mr. Mayor, what is this solving for? Like, ultimately, what are we doing by changing this?
So currently, we have these districts, right? And then for the highway ones, it actually is more restrictive than like any detached signage that you could do outside of these limits. So it's just updating that so that you can do that. But ultimately, these districts are at heavier trafficked areas, so it allows for those businesses to provide more signage in the area for having bigger signs or taller ones,
Gotcha. Thank you.
especially for like billboards.
Any additional questions from council?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Cameron?
So to your question in that, because I think you did a great job of answering, there is a lot of growth and development on the MM corridor. A lot of questions of this is starting to arise. That what we find is in the development community, there's times you're bringing stuff to our attention like that is more restrictive, and we understand how that's limiting our ability to market those properties as well. So finding a way to be more flexible in the signage of that is that is conducive to other locations is pretty much what's driving a lot of this conversation. Is that sometimes in the development side we realize when they're evaluating us as a site, there are things that are more restrictive, and there's a reason like that was never the intent. So making sure we bring those to you before that it's not restricting our ability to leverage our properties along the MM corridor as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron. Any additional questions from council? Seeing that there's none, do we have any citizens here this evening to comment on this one? Not seeing any. As a reminder to council, this is a first read. Make sure that you get with staff with any questions before the next meeting. Moving on to item number 8. I need a motion and a second for the first reading of Bill 24-75 by title only, please.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All of those in favor?
Aye.
All of those opposed? Are there any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0-0. Laura will read the ordinance by title, please.
An ordinance of the City Council approving the final plat of Boyce Hills, a residential subdivision within the Boyce Mixed Use Plan Development District.
Thank you, Laura. We've got Patrick Ruiz here again this evening.
Good evening again. The City of Republic's Builds Department received an application from Jeff Boyce on behalf of Jeffrey Boyce Enterprises, LLC for the final plat of Boyce Hills. The final plat of Boyce Hills will legally divide approximately 39.5 acres of land into 8 lots zoned as Boyce Mixed Use Plan Development District. The final plat will also convey the dedication of associated right-of-way, utility, and stormwater easements to the city. The final plat includes approximately 2,677 linear feet of new street and 2,612 linear feet of new sidewalk. The final plat substantially conforms to the development plan for Boyce Mixed Use Plan Development District as approved by City Council on June 4th, 2024, in addition to the requirements of the City Code Chapter 410 Subdivision Regulations and Article 5 Major Subdivision Final Plat. City staff recommends approval of the final plat.
Thank you, Mr. Ruiz. Do we have any questions from City Council? Seeing that there is none, I do have citizens' comments this evening. Would like to call forward Caleb Freeland.
Good evening, Council. My name is Caleb Freeland. I'm the civil engineer on the project. I'm just here as the owner's representative to answer any questions, if there are any.
Do we have any questions from council? Doesn't look like we have any this evening. Thank you. Any last chance questions from council? Seeing that there is none, and pursuant to 3.10, paragraph F of the charter, staff is requesting the second reading of this ordinance during tonight's meeting. I now need a motion and a second to approve the second reading of Bill 24-75 to be held during tonight's meeting.
Motion. Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. All of those opposed? Are there any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0-0. Moving on to item number 9. I need a motion and a second for the first reading of Bill 24-76 by title only, please.
Motion. Second.
Got a motion and a second. All of those in favor?
Aye.
All of those opposed? Are there any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0-0. Laura will read the ordinance by title, please.
An ordinance of the City Council authorizing the city administrator to execute an amended collective bargaining agreement between the City of Republic and Southern Missouri Professional Firefighters Local 152, bargaining unit of the Republic Fire Department.
Thank you, Laura. And we've got Miss Addington here this evening to give us an overview.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening. Lisa Addington, Chief of Staff. As some of you may recall, the new fire union contract was approved by council earlier this year, went into effect February 3rd. We do have 2 revisions to this agreement. The first revision is on page 20. We submitted temporary language pertaining to the pay for performance pay structure. The fire department did ask for the remainder of the year to establish and implement parameters and a performance matrix for their department. The department wanted to reserve their right to revert back to the step and grade pay structure. However, as a result of the vote, the department would like this language stricken from the agreement, and they will remain on the pay for performance pay schedule in accordance with the rest of the city. The second revision is on page 21, and this language has been revised accurately to reflect the change in the Mission Square contribution regarding the city match of up to 4% of the employee's base salary with the implementation date of 1/1/25. This change is due to the upgrade in our loggers program to L6, which will also become effective 1/1/25 and was also approved by you, Council, in October. Staff is recommending approval of these revisions, and I am happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Addington. Do we have any questions from council? Seeing that there is none, do we have any citizens' comments this evening? Seeing that there is none, and pursuant to 3.10, paragraph F of the charter, staff is requesting the second reading of this ordinance during tonight's meeting. I now need a motion and a second to approve the second reading of Bill 24-76 to be held during tonight's meeting.
Motion. Second.
Got a motion and a second. All of those in favor?
Aye.
All of those opposed? Are there any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0-0. Moving on to new business and second reading of ordinances. Item number 10. I need a motion and a second for the second reading of Bill 24-75 by title only, please.
Motion.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All of those in favor?
Aye.
All of those opposed? Are there any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0-0. Laura will read the ordinance by title, please.
An ordinance of the City Council approving the final plat of Boyce Hills, a residential subdivision within the Boyce Mixed-Use Plan Development District.
Thank you, Laura. Does council have any additional questions or discussion before moving on to final passage? Seeing that there is none, I now need a motion and a second for the final passage of Bill 24-75, please.
Motion.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. We're now going to take a roll call vote. Motion passes 8-0-0. Moving on to item number 11. I need a motion and a second for the second reading of Bill 24-76 by title only, please.
Motion.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All of those in favor?
Aye.
All of those opposed? Are there any abstentions? Motion carries 800. Laura will read the ordinance by title, please.
An ordinance of the City Council authorizing the city administrator to execute an amended collective bargaining agreement between the City of Republic and Southern Missouri Professional Firefighters Local 152, bargaining unit of the Republic Fire Department.
Thank you, Laura. Do we have any questions or comments from council before moving on to final passage? Seeing that there is none, I now need a motion and a second for the final passage of Bill 24-76, please.
Motion.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Now going to take a roll call vote. Motion carries 800. Moving on to other business. Item number 12, 24-R-56, a resolution of the City Council authorizing execution of an agreement with Burns & McDonnell Engineering Company Incorporated for the provision of engineering design services on a new elevated water tank and well. I now need a motion and a second to take up resolution 24-R-56, please.
Motion.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. We've got
Me.
Mr. Cameron here this evening to give us an overview.
So, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an agreement that will begin for us to start the engineering of the water tower on the Convoy of Hope campus. What I will say is that there will be some additional changes. What we're asking for permission is to proceed. That there's not going to be any material changes that I suspect will be coming from the contract. I understand that we sent comments yesterday before the read. So I do not want to delay this contract basically for language that needs to be worked out with legal. So I'm asking for permission to proceed. There will be no material changes that I suspect, and if there are, we'd bring them back. However, I do believe we can reach an agreement between us. I did not want to take it off the agenda, so I do believe we'll work that out. And so one thing I want to clarify in this is only for the tank and the well. There are some supporting appurtenances that go into filling a water tower that will be done through another engineering contract, but because this is through a grant that was specifically related to a water tank and a well, we did not want to have to get NEPA clearance for the water line. So we'll be bringing back a smaller contract that'll be taking care of the supporting water line through another firm. But I have Jason Garner with Burns & McDonnell. They've been the ones that have helped us with the wastewater plant, the master water plan from the very beginning. It is a 1 million gallon tank and a well. It will add an additional capacity to the city. It'll allow us, the city in and of itself, to have redundancy moving forward. This is the first step. The next step will be to secure another site and to build a secondary tower within the next 3 to 4 years in addition to this one. But we're starting with this one tonight with this agreement with Burns & McDonnell. And I am recommending, the staff is recommending approval.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron. Any questions from City Council?
It's just a cosmetic thing. Will that be seen from the highway, the
It-
tower?
It will, and it will include both the city's logo and the Convoy of Hope logo.
Oh, great.
Thank you, Mr. Harder. Any additional questions from council?
That won't cost extra, will it, Jason? Thanks.
Seeing that there are no additional questions, as this is a resolution, we can call this immediately to a vote. All of those in favor?
Aye.
All of those opposed? Are there any abstentions? Resolution passes 800. Item number 13, 24-R-57, a resolution of the City Council approving a preliminary plat for Legacy Estates, a residential subdivision consisting of approximately 29.94 acres located at the 1100 block of North Main Street. I need a motion and a second to take up resolution 24-R-57, please.
Motion. Second.
Got a motion and a second, and we've got Mr. Ruiz here this evening to give us an overview.
Good evening. Enterprise Developments LLC has requested approval of a preliminary plat of approximately 29.94 acres for Legacy Estates, a subdivision consisting of 87 residential lots zoned medium-density, single-family residential R1M, streets and infrastructure. So approximately 25 acres of the subject property was recently annexed into the city on March of this year and then was rezoned to R1M in August. At the time of the annexation, the piece to the right, which was approximately 5 acres, was in the city limits already and was zoned medium-density single-family residential as well. The preliminary plat proposes 7 new streets, with 2 of them connecting to Main Street and 2 of them continuing to the previously planned stub-outs of Binney and College Avenue from the south. A looped water system connection will be provided through the subdivision by utilizing existing system adjacent to the south and east. As for the wastewater system, effluent would gravity to the Evergreen lift station to the north and then to the wastewater treatment plant from the subject site. The water system, named lift stations, and wastewater treatment facility currently have capacity to serve the intended use. There is no floodplain on the site. However, the site is near a mapped sinkhole to the west of the property. The preliminary plat proposes the 30-foot no-build setback from the identified sinkhole to be within the common lot, located on the west side of the site. You can see that along North Binney Avenue. Let's see. The preliminary plat proposes 1 stormwater detention basin on the east side of the site. The stormwater is designed to exit the site from the detention and travel across Main Street. So once across the street, it would be discharged into existing stormwater infrastructure and into the floodplain located to the north and east. So the design of streets, sidewalks, water, and sanitary sewer systems and stormwater detention will be reviewed and permitted during the infrastructure permitting process. City staff recommends approval of the preliminary plat.
Thank you, Mr. Ruiz. Do we have any questions from City Council? Mr. Harder.
So I see 2 entrances onto Main Street off of Lapis and James. Do you see Jean Lane coming through eventually back on Main Street?
It would be possible, like anytime that you have new development, like especially for subdivision plats, you have to have connections from the east, north, and south. So that would probably be a natural place for another road to continue on.
And they have taken consideration the traffic counts and that's going to increase and.
Yeah, and of course it would have to be reviewed to make sure there's enough spacing, for road connections between other roads.
Thank you, Mr. Harder. Any additional questions from City Council? Seeing there is none, do we have any public comments this evening? Seeing that there is none, as this is a resolution, we can call this immediately for a vote. All of those in favor?
Aye.
All of those opposed? Are there any abstentions? Resolution carries 8-0-0. Moving on to item number 14, 24-R-58, a resolution of the City Council approving a preliminary plat for Tiger Creek, a residential subdivision consisting of approximately 40 acres located at 3445 East Hines Street. I now need a motion and a second to take up resolution 24-R-58, please.
Motion.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. And we've got Mr. Ruiz here again this evening.
Last but not least, S6 Tiger Creek LLC has requested review and approval of a preliminary plat of approximately 40 acres for Tiger Creek. This has 115 residential lots zoned R1H or high density single family residential, streets and infrastructure. So the plat proposes 10 new streets, with 2 of them connecting to Hines Street and 1 of them continuing the previously planned stub out of Colonial Street to the west. A looped water system connection will be provided through the subdivision by utilizing existing system adjacent to the west. As for the wastewater system, development will require the relocation of the existing lift station located in Liberty Place, Phase 2, to facilitate gravity flow throughout the development. The effluent will flow from that relocated lift station to the Schuler Creek lift station before it is pumped to the wastewater treatment facility. So the water system, named lift stations, and wastewater treatment facility currently have capacity to serve the intended use. The site does contain areas of floodplain and designated areas of a blue line stream as identified by the Corps of Engineers. Development of the site requires compliance with the local, state, and federal regulations related to floodplain and the blue line stream. The site does not contain any identified sinkholes. The plat proposes 1 stormwater detention basin in the northern portion of the development and a series of drainage areas aligning with the core blue line stream as mentioned previously. A stormwater report will be reviewed by the city engineer during infrastructure design review, and then any of those stormwater components impacting the blue line stream will be reviewed and permitted by the Corps of Engineers. So the design of streets, sidewalks, water, and sanitary sewer systems will be reviewed and permitted during the infrastructure permitting process. City recommends approval of this preliminary plat as well.
Thank you, Mr. Ruiz. Do we have any questions from City Council?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Neal?
do we know what the time frame for this compared to the roundabout on ZZ would be? 'Cause that's the concern I'm looking at, is like the James Avenue where traffic backs up in the mornings, and if we don't have something that's relieving that, is this going to cause a problem there?
Well, I would believe this would probably be before that, but I'll have to defer somebody with the roundabout time frame.
I'll take care of it, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Cameron?
So there is no time frame for the roundabout that would be in, just because it's a funding deficit. I mean, that is a cost share between us until the MM issue is resolved with the widening. That cost share money is tied up on MM versus the Hines Street roundabout. That much I can tell you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron. Thank you, Mr. Neal. Do we have any additional questions from council?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Gerke?
So you'll have two exits on Hines, and then Colonial cut to the west, and then nothing coming on ZZ. Then correct?
That is correct, yeah.
Yeah. There's no other stub ends heading west, right? They all dead end on the. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, and with kind of like the blue line stream and the floodplain, that also, you wouldn't want a road going through to ZZ as well.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Gerke. Mr. Updike?
Mr. Gerke asked the question I was thinking,
Okay.
so.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Updike. Do we have any additional questions from City Council? Do we have any questions or comments from the public this evening on this one? Seeing that there is none, and as this is a resolution, we can call this immediately to a vote. All of those in favor?
Aye.
All of those opposed?
Nay.
Are there any abstentions? Motion carries 7-1-0. Moving on to reports from staff. Mr. Cameron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make this extremely brief. This is the last meeting we're going to be having in this location. The rest of the council meetings will be at the Builds facility. So thank you for everybody that's pulled together to bring that together. Also, we had received our initial meeting with Crossland Construction, who is building adding an additional 14 to 15,000 square feet to the Builds building for the administration portion. The plans are underway for a late 2025 or early 2026 completion. Any reference regarding the water rates moving forward, or any questions that you have, again, please contact me between now and the second read. It's hard to believe that the holidays are upon us. So this Friday, we will be having the staff end of year meeting. Council is encouraged if you can be there. If not, we understand. But we will be having our meeting this Friday, December 13th. We will be unveiling the video that is going to be going out to the development community that has been recently completed. So looking forward to sharing that with the staff, and then ultimately sharing that with the community, and also with investors and developers, that it is development related as to why and what's taking place in Republic, and why to continue to invest and develop in our community. I want to thank everybody that came along for the MM partnership meeting last Thursday. We talked about, we had over 60 in attendance. I don't know how many it was, 100, how many we had it in total, but we had a very strong delegation of regional leaders and investors in our area talking about what is needed to widen MM to 5 lanes. We are approximately $6 to $10 million short on the project, but getting that widened to 5 lanes will be an instrumental part from I-44 to James River. Also, just a reminder, today started the election sign up for the open council seats. It is a 1-year election for the current seats that are occupied by Councilmember Fields, Shaw, Campbell, and Harder. I do understand that we've had some that have signed up already today, so I just remind you to go see Laura at the Builds facility. If you're looking or interested in signing up for council, it is a 1-year term. And lastly, tonight we actually have our Shop with a Hero. So is that our police and fire basically out at Walmart tonight working with that? I want to thank our staff. If you've never been at Shop with a Hero, which we're at a council meeting tonight, so we can't be, but at the same time, it is a really cool, awesome opportunity, and I love the fact that our staff get out there. I know we had Santa at the community building, correct? What was it? And you helped out with that, Councilmember Harder. Was you Santa or Santa Claus this year?
I was just a helper.
Also, there is a public hearing with MoDOT regarding the MM Highway widening that will be Tuesday, December 17th. It's a come and go style meeting that will be held from 4:30 to 6 o'clock. What this is referring to, and Karen, if I'm incorrect, please help me, but this is the section from Farm Road 160 to 60. Is that correct?
No, this is actually the section that's the cost share between I-44 and
Okay.
James River, and then James River to Farm Road 160.
See, that's why I asked Karen. So basically, the meeting we had last week, there is going to be a public meeting for those people that own property along the right-of-way, but anybody who wants to talk about the project, it does include a median. Obviously, this is the last meeting of the year. I want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and thank you for another outstanding year. We continue to move forward and advance this community. It's been a lot of transition, a lot of hard work, a lot of difficult decisions, but I just want to thank the staff, the community, and this council, the mayor for stepping in. We've had elections, charter changes, and a lot of things that have taken place. But the best is yet to come. I'm going to tell you to buckle up and hang on, because 2025 is going to be another busy year. We got a lot of things that are taking place, and I just I'm looking forward for us all to take a little bit of a break, gear up, and come back in January. With that, Mr. Mayor, that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron. Moving on to reports from council. Do we have any reports from city council? It's last chance. Last meeting of the year, last normal meeting, regular meeting.
Normal.
Going once, going twice. Moving on to reports from the mayor. I'd just like to thank everyone again for this year, especially last weekend, the Kiwanis and Christmas parade. Wonderful job. That was an excellent time. Anyone that was there, the spirit of Christmas was alive and well on Main Street this weekend. I'd like to also thank the Main Street events for putting on this Main Street on Christmas and all the coordination that went into that. It was a tremendous event. A lot of participation, a lot of memories were being made on Main Street this weekend, and a lot of great feeling. Truly a great way to celebrate Christmas. I'd like to thank the Price Elementary School children for Leadership Day that they had. They invited the mayor out there to see some of their work on leadership training, and just wanted to let them know that I did learn a few things from them. First and fourth graders, very impressive out there at Price Elementary. So I'd like to thank them. Thank you, David, for the stakeholders meeting. A lot of very good information. I appreciate the access to all of that, and appreciate all the council members that were able to make it out there too. This is the end of the year, so I'd like to thank staff. I'd like to thank our city council. I'd like to thank our planning and zoning. Thank you to our liaisons that are on planning and zoning. Gary, thank you for the few months that you gave us at the beginning of the year, and thank you, Mr. Fields, for representing us for the rest of the year. I'd like to thank all the staff for everything that they've given to us. Thank you for our leadership. Thank you especially to our city council. Appreciate everyone being here. I know this is time away from family, and I'm going to stop it at that to give us more time with family. So Merry Christmas.